This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours. Sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.
Hey, how you doing? Now let me ask you a question. How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel good these days? Did you feel worse? Do you know why you feel the way you feel about yourself, the way you do, or the way you did? It's something to really consider. And I'm going to help you to figure out what is a better way of going about that. And also along the way, I'll talk about the things, the people that affect us and the way we look at ourselves. And why a lot of the time that's a lie. Well, check it out. There's a strange kind of pain that comes when you look back at old versions of yourself and realize you did not know what you had. Now, it could be you who used to be a beauty queen, or you who used to look like the Incredible Hulk, or you who looked really porky, really chubby, or you who looked really emaciated or skinny. Or maybe you just looked regular. Maybe you were skinny fat, and now you're fat. Who knows? In other words, check it out. You look at an old picture, an old video, an old account, an old version of your face, your body, your voice, your energy. And instead of just remembering who you were, you start seeing that person differently. You start thinking, wait a minute, I wasn't actually as bad as I thought I was. As a matter of fact, some of us are looking back at those pictures and saying, man, I wish I looked like that still. I wasn't as hopeless as I felt. I wasn't as unattractive as I believed. I wasn't as worthless as I thought I was at that time. And then the question comes, the real question that I asked a little bit. Why didn't I know I was enough? I was good enough. Why didn't I know that I had some things? Why did I spend so much time feeling bad about myself? Now, you could be just looking at one picture or one moment of time in your life. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 5 years. Why did I let other people treat me like they had the authority to decide whether I had value or not? And for some of us, that made us seek attention that we didn't need to seek. We looked for approval that we didn't need to look for. And that's what I want to talk about this episode. Because it's not about weight, if you're heavy. It's not about looks, if you're supposed to be supposedly pretty, but you look handsome. That's what my dad would say. It's not just about confidence, if you have a lot of anxiety and you're shy. It's about what happens when you let other people become your mirror. And if the wrong person becomes the mirror, you spend years looking at yourself through rejection, silence, betrayal, abandonment, mixed signals, and disappointment, and then start calling that your identity. You start calling their treatment your truth. You start calling their inability to love you properly proof that something must be wrong with you. And sometimes, years later, you look back and realize they were wrong. Or maybe even more painfully, you realize you were wrong about yourself too. You see, yesterday on a walk, I was thinking about this lately. Well, lately, that's when it was. Because I looked back at some old recordings of late of myself singing on Smule, if you know what Smule is. For those of you who don't know, Smule is the singing app that became popular probably mostly because of T-Pain, where people can sing along, sing songs, duets, post recordings, and build a following. And there was a time when I used to sing on there quite a bit, quite regularly. I had a pretty large following. And when I say large, it was pretty, it was in the thousands. And my voice for the average person, I would say, is pretty good. Some songs I could sing pretty well. Some songs I could probably sing close to the original singer, depending on the song. And then there were some other songs when my singing was absolutely horrible. And some of these things still exist online. As a matter of fact, if you go to my Facebook, my personal Facebook page, you can listen to me sing if I've had the guts to leave them up, because every once in a while I take stuff down. Anyway, but that's just the truth. I'm honest about it. Like, there's some things I'll put up and say, oh, this one's bearable, let me post that one, and then I'll hear like 5 bad notes and I'll like rip it down. Or there are a very few where I think I sang the song perfectly. Anyhow, sometimes you catch the right song, the right key, the right feeling, and it works. And sometimes you listen back and think, who in the world would allow me to post this anywhere? But that's not really the point. The point is that when I look back, I saw two different versions of myself. On one account, the first account, or one season where I would say I was around 210 pounds. Another where I was heavier, maybe like 260. Right now, I would say I'm around 270. Now, hopefully, I wear these weights well, probably looking 40 pounds less when these numbers that I'm giving you. And looking back at those different versions of me felt strange, because it almost felt like looking at two different people. And trust me, it looks like two different people. Not just the weight, right? It was the feeling, it was the eyes, it was the energy, it was the heaviness. And when I look back at the version of me at 210 pounds, it hit me in a way I was not expecting. Because for all, I was going to say intents and purposes, but in most people's eyes, in the average eye of the beholder, 210 pounds is heavy for a guy who's only around 5'11". I used to be an athlete, so there's a lot of muscle mass carried. There's a nice cushioning of fat above it, but I don't look like a hugely obese person. I don't know if you've seen any of my pictures, but anyway. Anyhow, I didn't expect, I didn't know, honestly, at 210 I looked that good. I didn't know I had something then. I didn't know I was already becoming something then, you see, because at that time I was too busy feeling bad about myself. And I, to recognize exactly what I really looked like objectively. And that is strange grief, because now I don't just miss that weight. I don't just miss being smaller. I don't just miss being younger. I grieve the fact that I could not see myself clearly while I was there. I wish I could go back and say, man, stop talking to yourself like that, or thinking about yourself in that way. You're not as bad as you think, not even close. You are not as hopeless as you feel, you're not nothing. You're trying. You're showing up. You're singing. You're working out. You're surviving. You're taking care of your kids. But at that time, I couldn't see it. And I think a lot of people live that way. They're not as bad as they feel. They're not worthless as they think. They are not unattractive, untalented, unloved, or useless as they have conceived themselves that they are. But they can't see it because their view of themselves has been damaged, it's been distorted. Sometimes by life, sometimes by grief, sometimes by rejection, sometimes by the wrong relationships, sometimes by people who only valued them when they were useful, sometimes by people who made them feel like love had to be earned over and over again. And that is where things get dangerous because if you're already struggling to see your own self-worth, right? And then you place your worth into the hands of someone careless, they can do a lot of damage to you. They can leave, right? And you think it means you weren't enough, or you weren't good enough. They can come back and you think it means you finally became enough and you've arrived. They can ignore you and you can think it means you're invisible. They can want you when you look better and you think it means you were not worth wanting before. And now your value is moving around based on their appetites and their needs and their wants, based on their moods, based on whether they're lonely, based on whether you are convenient, based on what kind of options they have, based on proximity, based on your job, based on where you live, based on whether they want access to you again, based on money that you may or may not have. And that's not a way to live. But I understand how it happens. Check it out. Because at that time in my life, I was working out. I was trying to get fit. I was trying to build muscle. I was trying to do something with myself. I used to go to the gym, show up, get on a machine by 6 o'clock, which was usually an arc trainer by Cybex for 50 minutes. Then I'd get off the Cybex and then I'd sit down on the Concept 2 rower and I would row for 5K, which would take me about 20 minutes. Then, if I was satisfied, I would either do a little small walk on a treadmill and then I would go hit the weights. Now, I didn't build that muscle mass that many guys wanted because personally, I just wanted to be smaller. I wanted to fit into larges and mediums. And I got there. I don't know if it was the most healthy, but I got there. I felt good about myself. I felt strong. You see, I had started at 250 and I lost a lot of weight. I got down to 205 at my lowest. And this is from being an adult, from after college. Like that was the lowest I've ever been, right? And from the outside, someone could have looked at that and said, he's doing good. As a matter of fact, when I stopped going to the gym, it was a Good Life gym in Toronto here. They actually called my home, wondering if something had happened to me because they hadn't seen me. Now I still had a membership, but what the front desk workers said, they said that they missed me, and some of the members were asking where I was because I was great motivation for them, and then I had honestly no idea. You know, from the outside, people are saying, well, he's losing weight, he's in the gym, he's singing, he has following, he's making progress, and they wouldn't have been wrong. And here's the funny thing. I was at the gym. I honestly was minding my own business. It was a breakup I had gone through. And I had weirdly, I had women from other countries trying to talk to me. Now, it wasn't only because of the singing, there was something about my personality. That's what I believe, but maybe it was my rugged good looks or whatever it was, you know? Women from Paris, even from the gym, somebody who'd come from Colombia, just vast amounts of people. But I just thought, maybe I'm just a nice person. They see me around or they hear me singing or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I look back and I'm like, that guy's actually a pretty good looking guy, you know? But anyway, but they would not have had the whole truth though, these people. Because while I was improving, I was also struggling to survive. And that is something people don't always understand. You can be improving and still be falling apart. You can be losing weight and still feeling lost. You can be going to the gym and still feeling hopeless. You can be singing and still feel unseen. You can get compliments and still not believe them. You can look better and still not feel better. Sometimes what looks like confidence from the outside is desperation on the inside. Sometimes the gym is not just about health. Sometimes it's the only place you know to put that pain. Sometimes singing isn't just singing. Sometimes it's the only place that sadness can come out without you having to explain it. Sometimes discipline is not something from self love. Sometimes it is coming from self hatred. And those are different things. There is a difference between saying I love myself enough to care for myself and saying I hate myself so much that I have to become someone else or the best version of myself. That's what they used to say. One is healing, right? The other is running. And I think at that time I was doing a little bit of both. I was trying to get better, but I was also trying to escape myself. And then something happened that made all of this even more complicated. I got down to around 205, and an ex saw me and they came back. Or at least that's how I felt. They clawed their way back into my life and I don't know if you have ever had this happen where someone who once overlooked you, took you for granted, booted you out, hurt you, left you, or made you feel like you were not enough, suddenly sees you differently after you improve yourself in whatever way you needed to supposedly improve yourself. But that can mess with your head because part of you thinks maybe now I'm worthy. Maybe now they finally see me. Maybe now I've become the kind of person they can love because you didn't feel love before. And that's the trap. Because when someone comes back after you change, it can feel like healing, right? Probably just for a split second if you're honest. It can feel like the wound is corrected. It can feel like proof that you finally have become enough. But sometimes being chosen by the wrong person can feel like healing at first, when really it is just the wound reopening with better lighting. Because you have to ask a hard question. Did they come back because they finally understood my heart? Or did they come back because the package looked better? Did they come back because they finally valued you? Or did you become more useful, more attractive, more appealing, more show ready, more convenient? Did they love you? Or did they love having access to the version of you that looked better to them? That is a painful thing to think about because nobody wants to feel like they were only wanted after they became acceptable. Nobody wants to feel like their heart was not enough but their improvement was. And in my case, they came back and then they slowly broke me down again, worse than before. That is the part that teaches you something if you are willing to look at it honestly. Because sometimes the person who returns is not returning because they have changed something. Sometimes they are returning because you changed. And if their character is the same, the ending is most likely going to be the same too. Because now you are not only hurt by what they did, you are hurt by what you thought their return meant. You thought it meant you were finally valuable. You thought that it meant that you were finally seen. You thought that it meant that you'd finally become enough. So when they break you down again, it doesn't just feel like a relationship problem. It feels like a verdict on you, a judgment on who you are as a person. It feels like maybe I really am not enough. And that is why you have to be careful about giving people that kind of power over you. Because if their leaving means you're worthless and their returning means you're worthy, then they can control your value in both directions. That's not love, that's bondage. And at some point, you have to stop negotiating your worth. You have to stop trying to hold a court case for your own value. You don't need to keep presenting evidence. Here is how loyal I was. Here is how much I cared. Here is how much I did for you. Here is what I Here's what I changed. Here's how much I grew. Here's how much I suffered. Here is why I deserve better. Here is why I am worth loving. And at some point, if someone needs that much convincing to treat you with basic care, they may not be the person who should have access to you at all. That doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you've never made a mistake. It doesn't mean you never have to reflect on yourself. But there's a difference between accountability and auditioning for love. There's a difference between taking responsibility and begging someone to recognize your worth. There is a difference between working on yourself and trying to become acceptable to someone who benefits from you doubting yourself. You can't negotiate your value with someone who benefits from you not knowing it. And some people do benefit from you not knowing it, trust me. They benefit when you're unsure. They benefit when you're explaining everything. They benefit when you're apologizing for things that weren't all yours. They benefit when you are trying to win them back. And that's the one that so many of us get stuck in. You see, if you didn't do anything wrong, now, not to say that you're perfect. You understand? If you did something, say 5 years ago, right? You turned over a new leaf and you're trying to win this person back who has realized and seen that you haven't continued in maybe a negative or a destructive manner, which would hamper your ability to be the person that you need to be in whatever situation you're in, and they're still treating you that way, you can't win this person back. And worse, if you didn't do anything that would have jeopardized the relationship at all, and they have walked away from you, you are who you are. If they've walked away, you can't win them back. Now, they might come crawling back when things about you or around you have changed, but you can't win a person back who's just decided to leave you. I don't care. If they show up again, it's because there's something in you that is convenience for them. That's why they're back. And when that convenience runs out, right? When your convenience store, whatever it is about you runs out, wears down, gets old, gets wrinkled, gets fat, slows down, runs out of money, whatever it is, whatever the reason is that they're back with you, trust me, they're going to leave again. You can't win a person like that. They have to change themselves. They have to change their mind about you for a proper reason. There's something in them, not you. They benefit when you keep wondering, what else can I have done? Or what else can I do? They benefit when you keep believing that their inability to love you properly means you were hard to love. No, it's a lie. It's a 100% lie. Because sometimes the issue is not that you were hard to love. Sometimes the issue is that they were careless with love. Many times people like this come crawling back. But because you're such a nice, loving, giving person, you take them back, usually to your own demise. Usually. Sometimes the issue is not that you had no value, right? Sometimes the issue is that they were not the kind of person who could value what you brought. And this is where the hard part matters. Because I believe personality, heart, care, giving, helping, loyalty, forgiveness, patience, those are great qualities. They are valuable qualities. A person who actually cares is valuable. A person who actually gives is valuable. A person who actually tries is valuable. A person who shows up for people is valuable. But those same qualities can become dangerous when they are not protected. You have to have boundaries because some of the most valuable qualities in a person are also the easiest qualities for a selfish person to exploit. A caring person keeps trying. It's what they do. A loyal person keeps giving chances. It's what they do. A forgiving person keeps explaining, giving people breaks. A helper keeps showing up and helping. A loving person often blames themselves before they blame the person hurting them. And if you're not careful, people who take the best parts of you and use them against you, listen, they learn that you will stay. They learn it. They know it. Sometimes generally before you know it. They learn that you'll forgive me. They learn that you will feel guilty. They learn that you will keep trying to understand their pain while they ignore yours. That's right. They are ignoring you. It's not that they don't know, they're ignoring you. They learn that you will crawl through small openings, hoping this time they might love you properly. So they create small openings, generally too small for you to get through. Think of a trap door or a doggy door. And when you try to squeeze through that little doggy door, guess what happens to you when you can't get through? You get stepped on, you get used, forgotten, thrown aside, sometimes by the same people who call themselves loved ones. And that kind of thing can send a person spiraling. Because when strangers mistreat you, right, you can say, well, they don't know me. But when people close to you mistreat you, you start wondering, maybe they do know me. Maybe there's something about me that they saw. Maybe there's a thing, you know? Maybe they see something wrong with me. Maybe this is what I deserve. Maybe my love is not worth as much as I thought it was. And that is how other people's behavior starts becoming your identity. But their inability to value you is not the same as you having no value. It's their inability. Their willingness to use you is not proof that you were made to be used. Their decision to leave is not proof that you were not worthy of staying for. Sometimes it just means that they were not the kind of person who could handle what you offered with care. And I know that's hard to hear because when you care deeply, you don't just go easily. When someone leaves, they may leave physically, but they still live in your mind. They leave the room. They leave the relationship. They leave the marriage. They leave the role they had in your life, but mentally, emotionally, you are still keeping a place for them and you know it. Oh, I've moved on. Yeah, but they show up, they call, they text, and guess what? You answer. Maybe they know that if they text you 7 times, you'll answer on the 8th. You've done it every time. Maybe they know if they call you and hang up on you and they know that you see their number and then they ignore you for 5, 6 hours, that they get in your nervous system and you're hooked back again. You're still waiting for them to understand. You're still waiting for them to apologize. They're not going to. You're still waiting for them to come back and say, I see it now. They're not going to. You're still waiting for the version of them you love to become the version of them you needed. And I understand that. The problem is, you've put them up on a pedestal and you forgot about all the stuff that they did. You forgot about all their shortcomings. You're only thinking of their positives. You're not thinking of the day that they blew up at you and you didn't do anything. You forgot about the day they maybe embarrassed you in public and you didn't do anything at that moment to be embarrassed that way. I'm not saying this coldly. It's definitely not the podcast for that. I'm not saying just get over it, because grief doesn't work like that. Love does not work like that. Attachment doesn't work like that. But there comes a point where you have to tell the truth. If someone is not your spouse and they have decided to leave, let them leave. I'm going to say it again. If someone is not your spouse, your husband or your wife, and they have decided to leave, let them leave. If someone was your spouse and they have decided they want to leave and they have actually done so, then at some point you have to begin the painful work of letting them leave in your mind too. Of course, you're going to try to get them back. Do your best. But your best is all you can do. And beyond that, all you can do is pray and ask for support, maybe someone surrounding, but Don't break yourself over it. There's a reason they're leaving, and it might have nothing to do with you. Not because it didn't matter, not because the vows didn't matter, not because the love was fake, not because the history was nothing, but because you cannot keep living in the doorway after someone walked out. You got to move back in and let life continue. You can't keep feeding a relationship that only exists in your memory, your grief, and your hope. That is a miserable existence. It's just your imagination at that point. When someone leaves, do not spend the rest of your life trying to convince their ghost to come home, because that ghost cannot love you. That ghost cannot rebuild with you. That ghost cannot take accountability. That ghost cannot sit across from you and do work. That ghost cannot, well, it can haunt you. That part of you that still thinks your worth depends on whether they return or not. And this is important because sometimes healing still has the wrong person at the center. You say you're rebuilding, but you are rebuilding so they regret it. You say you're getting healthier, but part of you is hoping they see you. They see the post. They see the new body. They heard the new song. They see the new exploit. They see the new car. They see the new clothes. You say you're moving on. Maybe they just want to see who you're with. You think if you flash, oh, look at this person I'm with, like, but if you come back, I'll leave them for you. You'll see that. You know that. They know the twinkle in your eye. If they just see you for a second, they can read you like a book. Better put those sunglasses on. Just saying. You say you're moving on, but part of you is still imagining the day they realize they lost you and what they lost. And oh, what a big loss it was. And I understand that feeling. But at some point, your healing has to stop being a performance for the person who hurt you. Your rebuilding has to become yours, not revenge, not proof, not an audition, not a message, not a look, what you lost, yours. Because if you rebuild only to prove them wrong, they are still in control of the rebuild. If you heal only so they regret leaving, they are still sitting in the center on the throne of your healing. If you improve only so someone finally values you, your worth is still tied to their reactions, and that's not freedom. Freedom is being able to say, I still want to become a better person, but not because I'm trying to earn value from someone. I want to become a better whatever it is because I already have value. Now I want to be careful with something. Listen, back then, I was deeply sad. I'm not too keen on calling it depression because I was never actually diagnosed with it. I know the things that I thought about myself or thought about doing or whatever, but I know I entered this extreme state of sadness, would be the best thing that I would say. So much so that there were times I didn't want to be here anymore, honestly. And when I say that, I mean there were times I did not want to exist anymore. I believed in God, yeah. I believed I was a Christian. I believed in heaven. I had thoughts that were tied up in all of that. And of course, I am a Christian now. Of course, I believe in Jesus. Of course. But when I look back now, I also realize life was not as hopeless as it looked to me then. You know, sometimes you just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Why? Because things don't happen necessarily in a straight line, they wind. And some tunnels turn and twist, and if you're at one end, you just can't see the light. It might be a long tunnel. It might be dark. It might be cold. Your pain is real. It's not fake. The sadness was real. The heaviness was real. The exhaustion was real. The hopelessness was real. But pain can lie about the future. Pain can tell you nothing will change. This is where you're at. Pain pain can tell you that you're too far gone. Pain can tell you that because you feel worthless, you are worthless. But feelings are not always fact. And sadness can become a lens that darkens everything. When you are in deep sadness, you see your body through pain. You see your relationship through pain. You see your future through pain. You see your age. You see everything through pain. You see God through pain. You see yourself through pain. Your emotions wrapped all up in there. And that's dangerous because you start making permanent conclusions and decisions at times from a temporary state. And listen, if you're in that place where you do not want to exist, please do not carry that alone. Tell somebody, call somebody, let someone know how bad it has gotten. Drop me a message. I will try to help. Don't just sit there with it. It's not worth it at all. If you are in immediate danger, call emergency services where you are, or contact a crisis line in your area. You may feel like disappearing, but that doesn't mean life is finished. It means the pain is too heavy for you to carry by yourself. That's all it means. It's just too heavy. There is no shame in needing help. There is no shame in saying, I am not okay. And sometimes survival is the victory. It's not a perfect plan. It's hard. How do you get a perfect plan? Not a full comeback. Sometimes the victory is just standing, staying still. When I look back, I can see now that I was trying to survive. The gym was survival. The singing was survival. Weight loss was survival. The effort was survival. And that is why it hurts to realize I was so cruel to myself. Because I wasn't nothing, but I felt like nothing. I was a hurting person trying to stay alive. And maybe I deserve more compassion than I gave myself. Now, later, years later, I'm in a different place. I'm heavier. I'm older. Got way more aches and pains. I've gone through all kinds of life changes, all kinds of troubles, 5 or 6 deaths in my family. And grief really changes you. When you lose like a mother, a sister, a father, brother, people who are very close to you, people that you used to confide in. Just imagine, let's just say you had 4 people that you always would confide in, or people who you could talk to, who would understand where you're coming from, who you could suss it out with. And let's just say they all died within 10 years. Let's just say it adds weight, not just physical weight, emotional weight, mental weight, spiritual weight, life weight. People can look at you and only see that you gained weight, but they don't see what you're carrying. They see you at the funerals and wonder you don't seem yourself. And for some reason, people can't get it. The person who's in the casket would get it, but unfortunately, people around you don't get it. I lost my aunt, and she was the number one person I could literally talk about anything to. People don't see the stress, they don't see the heartbreak. They see your mistakes, they see your missteps, they see the weight gain, they see the new gray hairs. They don't see the grief. They don't see how it breaks your rhythm. They don't see how sadness can drain your discipline. They don't see how being used or broken down can affect your motivation. Maybe you're surrounded by a bunch of people who say they really, really care about you. But then you've slowly seen that really they only care about you when you're able to help them, do something for them, babysit for them, maybe sign something for them, pick them up every day and take them to work or something. And again, this isn't about making any excuses or blaming people. You still have to deal with reality. You still have to care for your own body. You still have to make the changes. Maybe you're not in a position to make a lot of changes, but there are little things that you can do. You can maintain. You don't have to get worse, that's for sure. And you can make little steps to go forward. But shame is not the same as truth. Shame just says, look at you. Compassion asks, what happened? Shame says you failed. Compassion says you survived, and now we need to rebuild. And that's a very different starting point. And I think now I have to rebuild differently. I can't pretend I'm the exact same person as I was before. And I can't just copy and paste the old method. There are physical limitations. For instance, I started working out, going to a really nice gym, and I matter of fact, I cut all the cardio. Remember all the cardio I told you I was doing? I started just doing weights, and I made a pact with myself that maybe I wouldn't make it 7 days a week. I knew I wasn't going to make it seven. No, I wouldn't make six. I know that I couldn't even make four on every week. But I know that I tried to promise myself at least two. At least I would walk in that place twice and give it what I got. And I kept that up. And guess what? I was about, I got down to about 255. And I just brought cardio back into my workout. But because of an old injury, I ended up with this herniated disc and numbness in the foot and pain that I've never had in my life. This sciatica and all kinds of numbness and stuff going on. So yeah, the weight has come back because I haven't been able to be as active. But it doesn't mean I'm just going to give up, right? I know what to do. I know how to do it. You just need the ability. Until then, you maintain, right? Until then, I do what I can do. Maybe I make sure that my hair is cut every week, which, because I cut my hair, that's fine, right? I can do it easy. Maybe I take care of my facial skin routine. Maybe I make sure my teeth are straight and I go get cleanings. And you know what I mean? You just do what you can do. At the end of the day, if someone, just saying, if someone is just going to love you because of your outer appearance, that's not love. You don't need it. That's the reality. You may want it. There may be certain things that you want to do, and that's going to hamper you because you don't have the physicality or the body or the facial, this, that, and the other, or you're older now, whatever the thing is. At the end of the day, you can only do what you can do. And beyond that, whatever the strength that the Lord helps you to do other things, whatever strength he gives you to do other things, you do them as well. Carry on. Yeah, you got aches, you got age, responsibilities, you got grief, you got experience. So now you have to be more creative. That's okay. More patient, more wise. I have to find a way to lose the weight and take care of myself without turning the whole thing into self-hatred again. See, the goal really isn't just the weight. So like, oh, I need to get to 205. No. The goal is just to become the version of me that someone else has decided finally worth wanting. Nah. The goal is to stop hating myself no matter if I get to 370 pounds. But no, I'm trying to work to get better, feel better. And that's the shift. I want to change, but I know that I have value. I can still need to lose weight, but know that I have value where I am. Things can always be worse. That's something my dad used to say, and I believe it. Things can always be worse. Yes, they can be better, but they can be worse. So don't think that's it. Keep moving. My value is not waiting for me at the end of weight loss or when I finally get into a relationship. You can't think that way. My value is the reason the work is worth doing because you are made in God's image. Look in the Bible, it says, let's create man in our own image. It doesn't say I'm going to create man in my image. No, it says let's create God. Yeah, let's create man in our own image. And that is a different type of motivation. When you believe you are worthless, change becomes punishment. When you believe you have value, change becomes care. So maybe the question is not only why didn't I know I was enough? Maybe the question is, am I going to make the same mistake again? Am I going to look back 10 years from now at this version of me and say, even then you had something? Even then you were still worth loving. Even then you were not finished. Even then God had not thrown you away. Even then your life still matters. I know that I can be worse. I'm only getting older, right? I don't want to only love myself in hindsight. I do not want to keep appreciating past versions of me only after they're gone. So maybe the lesson is not just that I should have valued myself back then. Maybe the lesson is that I need to value myself now before this version of myself becomes someone I only learn to love after he disappears. So why didn't I know I was enough? Partly because I was sad, partly because I was hurt, partly because I was seeing myself through rejection, partly because I let other people become my mirror, partly because I thought being wanted by the person or the wrong person meant I finally became valuable, partly because I thought if I could just become better, then maybe the people who mishandled me would finally admit that I was worth loving. But I think I know better now, or at least I'm learning. Your worth does not live in the hands of someone who walked away from you. Your worth does not disappear because someone did not know how to love you. Your worth does not begin when someone comes back. Your worth does not increase because someone who ignored you suddenly finds you attractive. Your worth does not depend on whether someone regrets losing you. Your worth does not de- your worth does not debate you or say, you have to keep winning. And when someone has decided to leave, sometimes you have to just let them leave. It doesn't mean sew on a new body part or a better body part or inject a new amount of whatever it is or put on the tightest thing you can possibly fit into to show you have some sort of a shape, or go find some fake eyelashes or fake hair or fake nails or fake whatever. Let them leave the room. Let them leave the relationship. Let them leave the role they used to play in your life. In some situations, yeah, they were just for a minute. Sometimes you were used. And it's something you have to come to grips with. Maybe you generally know that you can get a 7 and somehow you got a 9. And then they left after 2 months and you've been trying to fight back to get that 9 back or another 9. And you're like, well, maybe that was just a situation. Don't fight for stuff like that. You'll disappoint yourself. And eventually let them leave your mind too. Not because it didn't hurt, not because it was nothing, but because you can't keep using their absence as proof that you are not enough. Listen, look at what happened. Look at the pain. Look at the rejection. Look at the words that were used. Look at the time when they didn't even bother to respond. They're not responding to you. Their inability to communicate properly to you, their inability to care for you when they know that you were broken. You said it. You said exactly how you feel. You told them what they did and how it affected you, and they didn't respond. They don't care. That is real. Now, I'm not saying they never will. I'm not saying they shouldn't have or they shouldn't, but they don't. That is the reality. If you got to look at that text message again and then block them from your phone, do it if you got to. If you got to take pictures out of your phone, your videos or whatever it is, take it out. Give it away. Take the pictures off the wall, off the bed, the side table. Don't keep calling them or messaging them. They don't care. Move on. Anyway, y'all, take this for whatever it's worth. This is definitely a different type of podcast today. I kind of twisted myself up into it a little bit. Just remember, as cliche as it is, as cloudy as today might be, as dark as it might be right now, the sun will come out again. It may not be visible tomorrow. It may not be visible all week, but it will come out again. You will know what warmth is again if you continue moving forward. So move forward, my friend. See you next time, okay? Or you'll hear me next time, hopefully. All right. And again, guys, you're all willing. You're all willing. You're all welcome to not text, email if you want, yrppodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave a message in Spotify, I believe so. Yes. All right. Keep fighting, okay? Take care of yourself. That's right. I said keep fighting. And And that means not to fight with the person. Keep fighting, keep living, keep moving forward. Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 ducks. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.